Hi, and welcome to Real Life Interviews. I'm Jackie Allison. I have with me today Sam Leung. Sam is VP Corporate Development at Adventus Mining, and I'm looking forward so much to chatting with him. Welcome, Sam.
Hi, Jackie. How are you?
Very good. Thanks very much. And I know it's a busy time for you. I appreciate your taking the time to come and chat with us today so we can learn a little bit more about you, the person, and your background and your career. So we're just going to walk through and see what we encounter as we go. So I just thought maybe you could start off with letting us know a bit more about your education. Let's start there.
That sounds good. A pleasure, Jackie, to speak with you about, I guess, a bit of my background and answer any questions you have. A bit of my background, I studied engineering chemistry at Queen's, and my first job was as a metallurgist. And that Hatch gave me a chance to start my career in metals and mining, and I joined the autoclave technology group at the non-ferrous business unit, and that's how I got my start, and learned kind of with a lot of good mentors there, and on engineering studies. And from there, I think I gained exposure and developed an interest in more drivers of projects and the economics. So I was able to move into an advisory capacity within Hatch on due diligence assignments as well as on strategy assignments. So I did that for in all, it was 7 years at Hatch. The last five were between Toronto and London as more of a consultant on these assignments. And then in 2013, I started sounding a lot too much like a consultant, and had a chance to go in-house and join Lundin Mining's corporate development team back in Toronto. I was very lucky to be on a great team there, great executive team, corporate development team, as part of a number of transformational transactions there. So we bought the Eagle mine from Rio Tinto, and the Candelaria mine from Freeport-McMoRan, as well as a lot of JV work with Freeport, which eventually led to the sale of that stake. So in 2017, I joined Adventus as employee number 2.
Right. So let's just jump back to your work in consulting. Maybe you could tell us a bit about what that involved. For those who are sort of new to the industry, what might they look forward to if they go along a consulting route?
That's a good question, and kind of makes me play back a bit of history. I guess when I started out, it was very much like a junior engineer, engineering training, technical consultant, where I think a lot of the major mining companies around the world have outsourced the technical capacities to engineer projects, to estimate projects, and look at trade-offs. And so that was kind of my cutting of my teeth and trying to understand what projects are, why mining companies have to reinvest in exploration and new projects to not only, I guess, recover or find resources and additional production from depleted resources and reserves, but also to show growth as a corporate entity. So that was my start as an advisor to working in teams, but as an advisor to different clients, looking at that technical expertise that Hatch has. And then as I moved more into the commercial side, it was more of a management consulting capacity. And more of those assignments were to do with looking at investment reviews, due diligence for, are there any key drivers? What are the key drivers, like risks and opportunities with your investments, or what to do with an asset or a partnership? So that got to more kind of connect more of the multidisciplinary approach, be it commercial, be it geological, social, environmental, obviously, and that was a big part. So that was very much assignment and project driven. Sometimes they were operations, sometimes they were exploration projects, sometimes they were smelters, all the way downstream. So it's a wide array of experiences.
And did you have to travel quite a bit in that role?
Yeah, so as a technical consultant, at first less so, but when I had a few more years under my belt, I think, and more responsibility, absolutely. I had to be in front of clients wherever they were based, as well as where the assets were, for acquisition or investment, or working for governments, for example. We travel, I think, especially those years I was living in London. I think my expenses in flights and hotels were more than my salary. So it's a lot of traveling through.
And they're expensive.
Yeah, exactly. Very expensive in the Americas, in the Middle East. I started going to West Africa a little bit as well. So that was a great opportunity for me.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you find it interacting with your clients, whether it was governments or other companies? What was that like? How did you handle that?
It was it was interesting. It was always a learning experience. I think it still is 15 years later. Um, I think for me as a consultant then, I was always one of the youngest people, if not the youngest in the room. Especially my time in Europe, I was a bit exotic, so I always looked different. I was younger, my accent was different, and I think I had to learn how to use that to my advantage. It's a different way of getting heard, I guess, in terms of what my observations were and recommendations were. So um, it's definitely a challenge. I think we, in our sector, we're seen as a bit old school or behind the times in certain respects, and definitely it's an ongoing challenge and evolution of the sector. But it's different. I think as a consultant, you learn to tailor your messaging and your communication style to whoever the stakeholders are, not just the client.
Right. And you come from an engineering background then, but you had to use quite a few different skills and build that skill set as you went. And did you study management at some point as well?
I never did an MBA actually. So I mean, in terms of what was typical for engineers in Canada, I mean, Toronto probably has one of the higher concentrations of PNG MBAs, CFAs. And for me, I think I was lucky, quite fortunate. And I think I directed my career in wanting to try to learn as much on the job as possible. And I think that was a part that I was very fortunate in being in consulting. There were plenty of case examples that business school students study or management schools students study, but I had a kind of active role in these assignments. So I was very lucky. I did take a couple courses, but they were never entirely away from my work.
Okay, so that was a great career start, consulting, and then you moved on to the corporate world. What were some of the differences that you saw, being on the inside, so to speak?
And it demystifies the whole thing, right? When you're on the outside looking in, it's a different perspective. I think for me, the big driver was I wanted more ownership of what I was working on and who I was dealing with. I think it's because my role at the time, I was very intense, multi-week or multi-month type assignment, and then after your assignment's done, you kind of write a recommendation or report, you present, and then you kind of walk away, and you don't get to make decisions or see where it evolves or what happens. So I think after years of that, that was what built my motivation, and I think once I got into Lundin Mining, in my case in 2013, that was the opportunity, and it was a really nice change to see kind of start in with that kind of fresh eyes perspective that consultants are trained to have, but then really take hold of files, take hold of relationships, and then show continuity and monitor the continuity of whatever I was doing.
Right. So you got to see the projects progress, or
Yeah,
whatever you were working on
yeah, absolutely.
right through.
I saw the due diligence reports and presentations that I was part of, and the recommendations to the boards and decision makers, all the financing, all the mechanics behind the scenes. More connection to investors and investment community and markets, and how that would be perceived and engaged, and took part in it. We had as an example, the first assignment I was on, my first week, end of the first week of my work in 2013, I was responsible for finding a plane and mobilizing the team to go visit the Eagle mine, the project that was frozen at the time. And from that moment to kind of arriving in Marquette in Upper Peninsula, Michigan, all the way through to construction of the mine and the commercial operation of everything. I mean, it was I wasn't there on boots on the ground for all those years, but from the beginning, I was keeping track of what was happening. That's very rewarding, definitely. Something you
Yeah,
can
it's good.
sort of.
And did you have to engage in consultants along the way, and then understand how that interaction would go from the other
Yeah,
side?
yeah, absolutely. And first job, that first visit, I had to pick and get an environmental consultant with us on that plane as well, and look at some of the social aspects and what the rules were and what Rio Tinto had done. So I mean, ultimately, that's why they hired me, I guess, is to bring in some of that skill set in house. And no, it was a very unique opportunity, and I think I looked at it personally at the time too that I don't know how I would like it, on the corporate side. So it was a huge learning opportunity, huge test for myself, and I also had the mentality that if it really didn't work out on the chance that it didn't work out on the corporate side, then it would probably make me a better consultant if I went back into consulting.
Yes, good to have seen a couple different sides of the business and bring the unique perspective to each. So that's obviously very valuable. You've had time for other things beside work, I hope. You have a family. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that and how you manage to balance the two.
Yeah, yeah. It depends if you ask my wife or not, I guess. But you're just asking me. So I think in my case, it's evolved. I think how I find balance is probably the best answer I can give. I think when I was a consultant, I was single or relatively single at the time, and especially most of my 20s. And a big passion of mine that's fit really well in our sector is my love of travel and cultures. And as I got more experience and had more independence, and I was leading more assignments as a consultant, I would tack on, travel weekends or weeks, whenever, or days when I could visit some interesting locations beyond just a business trip. I do that a whole lot less now, if at all. But I think during my years in London, I met my wife, and I think now we have a little 2-year-old at home. So business travel is very different,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the plus side of COVID, staying home, has been seen. I think in our household, this is the longest stretch that I haven't traveled in my whole career, I think.
Yeah, that's quite different, and different draws on your time, and maybe some slightly different priorities when you've got a family
Yeah.
and want to spend
Yeah.
time with them. So enjoying work, but also being able to have a family and enjoy that as well. So that's wonderful. Do you have time for any other interests or hobbies? I know we met long ago volunteering on the Management and Economic
Yeah,
Society,
yeah,
CIM.
that's right, Jackie. We've known each other now for almost 15 years. I think when I first started coming to the events and commuting in from the suburbs, trying to learn more about metals and mining as a junior analyst, and I think, yeah, absolutely. I think with sports and things, I've always been very involved in baseball, and now I play a little bit of golf on the side and squash in the winter when I can. Um, but the reality now is the last 2 years with the baby, and my wife has her own business, and how busy it's been with Adventus and my other kind of board roles. It's hard to fit them all in. There's not as much regularity,
Mm-hmm.
I can say, but that's okay. I think that's okay. I'd rather spend the time to FaceTime with my little daughter.
Anyone with a family totally understands, and it's balancing. It's trying to do a bit of everything and keep the balance right, finding out what's right for each person. What would you say then, if you think back now, because you've had several, could say many careers in different parts of the business. What would you say is the most significant moment or a highlight, anything along the way that you would say had a major impact on you or your life?
Well, that's a big question. Um, I actually think a big moment or moment was a first assignment I had when I joined the consulting team. One of the earlier assignments when I joined the management consulting team, where Patch Advisory, and I was asked to go to be based in Santiago in Chile for a number of weeks, over 2-3 months. It was really my first taste of working abroad without moving abroad, and I was on my own, and I had to be in a new city, new country. I've been to Chile before personally, but for work, and in Spanish, which I'm still not fluent in, and having to pick it up. I think that was a great test. I look back now, and I think it was a lot to my mentors at the time at Hatch, who kind of identified me for that opportunity and to gauge that I was ready to do it, because I think that proved a lot to myself. Most importantly, that I could be an international professional, that the skills and training and my interests could offer something of value to clients and to companies. And then it kind of
How long were you
started
there?
That was around, I guess that was 2010, because I was there just after the major earthquake in Chile at the time. If you remember
Okay.
the earthquake, and it was the World Cup as well, because I was in the office cheering for Chile at the World Cup. So um, I was there for probably about 2 months in all, over maybe say a 3 month span.
Yes. Right.
Um, and I still have friendships from that time, that intensive time there. And I think that it wasn't a long period of time, but I think it speaks to also the quality of experience and the quality of time spent in all that we do, not just a number of years or a number of months.
Right. Yes.
It's
Good
very
learning
important.
experience. Some strong ties built during that time too, it sounds like. Wonderful. Yeah. So I guess you've had a number of experiences, different places, different people. If you had to highlight any particular challenges along the way and how you were able to deal with them, I mean, you did have, a challenge there with the language, for example, new place, new language, trying to cope with that. Was there anything else along the way that you would say was a major challenge?
Yeah, how do I mean, there's so many, in terms of day to day or week to week things that any professional goes through. I think for me, it was probably, I would say, in general terms, kind of recognition. I think in specific roles or assignments. I think it was at first, um, I was happy, and I was very fortunate to get a lot of experience, but it was almost like a fight to get recognition in those early years of my career. And I think that's very common for a lot of students coming out of university, even their first jobs in their first career or
Right.
the first role with a stakeholder. Um, Part of it is just learning to work in teams, learning to work for hierarchies of organizations and departments and things, right? And some of the level of politics, whatever that may be. And human beings are going to be some politics, right? Some angling of some sort. So I think that's probably been, when I look back, that's a big part of it. I think the challenges of working for incredibly smart people, working for people who took a lot of credit as well from their teams and others, and learning how to navigate kind of all in between.
Yeah.
I think another comment I'd add to that is that I probably learned a lot more from bad managers than good ones.
That's a good point.
I think
Very, very good point.
I mean, I would say that's a challenge for all of us. It's not just
Yes, yes. But as you say, you turn it into opportunity. It's a challenge at the time, and you have to learn to function within that. But it's a learning experience, and pretty much everything is, and it's not all smooth sailing.
That's right.
But very good to point that out, because we do learn, and the people above us aren't perfect either. So we have
That's
to
right.
cope, and we have to grow, and hopefully grow beyond that. But I guess a point there is that getting a good job is really just the start. It's really learning how to, as you say, navigate, how to function, learning along the way, and earning the right to be heard in some ways, because we do have to spend some time learning and listening. Sometimes it's a question of we don't know what we don't know. And so it's a longer road for some than others, but really it's all a learning opportunity. And at the end of the day, if we've earned it, we will be heard, hopefully.
Yeah. It's and you're making me think back to where I was in my life, 10, 15 years ago. And I think back to when I was graduating university, and my dad, I think my dad father faced quite a bit of lack of credentials and limits to his career. And I remember he really wanted me to continue on before leaving for work. Sort of career was to stay in and at least do a master's of some sort. And I said to him, look, the economy is good. I've got no work experience. I'll make you a promise that I think I'm going to learn here. But if I stop learning ever in any job that I'm in, then I'll consider going back to school. And you just reminded me of that, just a question. And I can honestly say I've never stopped learning in 15 years.
Perfect. Yeah. That is also one of the most important things for me. If I can learn from new things that I do, then that's great. It doesn't have to be the highest profile thing, but it's learning and growing. So lots of opportunity, and it's good to recognize that. So tell us a bit about what you're doing now in your other roles. You've got the VP Corp Dev role, but you're also on a couple of boards. Maybe tell us a bit about that activity and what's involved there.
Sounds great. With Adventus Mining, I was employee number 2, as I mentioned, and joined Christian Carlos Sumardi as the president and CEO in early 2017 as part of the IPO. And We initially started out as a base metals focused company. We actually had a mandate to look at investments, zinc investments in base metals. But out of a global search that we did, we basically uh, found that we had this potential to earn in on this incredible copper gold project in Ecuador, and that we could develop a business in Ecuador as kind of a new, relatively new mining jurisdiction that had legs of decades. And so our focus now, 3 years later, is 3 projects in Ecuador. We still have assets in Eastern Canada, in Newfoundland, and as well as in Ireland. But our focus is exploration and project development. So we have a unique portfolio, and we also have unique partners. So it's really good people and good partners is a big part of our business. So we're uniquely tied to Salazar Resources, another public company that's Quito based. As well, one of our key strategic investors, one of the largest private conglomerates in Ecuador. So we're well backed, and it's been an exciting 3 years, but we hope that we've got more exciting news and results to come.
Good, great. And what about your director roles within companies?
So as part of the Newfoundland assets, when we IPO'd, we had a number of projects. We were one of actually the largest concession holders in Ireland, and we also had exploration area around the old Buckins mine, as well as the Daniels Harbor mine in Newfoundland. And in Newfoundland, we did a transaction in 2018 where we divested all our projects in Newfoundland in return for an equity stake in a company called Canstar Resources. And so I've been Adventus's representative on the board of Canstar since 2018. And we have recently pivoted, added a new gold project in southern Newfoundland. It's very exciting. So it's a relatively early stage exploration project. We still have the lands around Buckins and Daniels Harbor, so there's optionality there. But it's my role is to kind of represent Adventus and all shareholders really to kind of look at the needs of a junior mining company, looking at financing, looking at exploration programs, finding new investors, and etc. So it's been an interesting experience, learning opportunity for me as well.
Yes, great.
On Abra Plata, I was asked by some of the shareholders of the original called Aethon Minerals. Aethon was a company that had exploration ground, early exploration in Chile, and that company found a deal to partner with Rio Tinto at the time. This is a couple of years back. And then last year, Aethon merged with Abra Plata with the Diablios project in Salta in Argentina. It's a silver gold project with interesting copper as well. So that company merged late 2019, and I'm on the board as an independent director there. It's been it was a struggle. It tells you a lot about our the junior mining space in particular, that we couldn't find buyers of the shares at 6 cents in January, February, before COVID even, and it hit 40 some odd cents in the last month or so. It's incredible how things can really change in our sector, how cyclical and volatile it can be.
Yeah, that is quite unique, I think, to this space. Very exciting, though. So much going on and so many things that can impact on share prices and projects. So it does take a lot of expertise, and it was wonderful hearing about your background and your work so far. I wish you all the best at work and with the family, and thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Jackie. My pleasure.